Welcome to the deep dive.
Ready to go?
So today we're doing something a little different. We're sort of embarking on a journey, but not through dusty archives or, academic papers.
No, this is much more personal. We're cracking open the vault of guidance.
Exactly. Those quiet whispers or sometimes those thunderous pronouncements of truth that really sculpt our lives and our careers over time.
It's fascinating when you think about it, isn't it? Every great life story has these anchor points, these little kernels of advice that when you look back, you realize, wow, that was a turning point.
Absolutely. And we're not talking about, the kind of cheesy platitudes you see on motivational posters.
No, not at all. We've actually analyzed a really comprehensive collection of profound insights.
And they come from everywhere. Ancient philosophy, family elders, revered mentors.
And even, the most unassuming characters, like a university professor who just happens to drop a truth bomb at the exact right moment.
Right. So what we've done is synthesize 14 of the most impactful pieces of advice from our source material. And to make sense of it all, we've grouped them into these sort of thematic chapters.
We have resilience, authenticity, connection, progress, and simplicity and perspective.
Think of this whole deep dive as a kind of intellectual shortcut, a way for you to internalize the hard-won wisdom of others without, having to make all the same mistakes yourself.
And our mission here really isn't just to list a bunch of good ideas.
No.
It's to dig into why they mattered,
what
was the context, who said it, and maybe most importantly, why was the person ready to hear it right then?
That timing component is so crucial. The same words can mean nothing one day and everything the next.
Precisely. So we're hoping to offer some fresh perspectives for you, the listener, to maybe re-examine your own foundational principles.
And maybe adopt a few of these frameworks for your own journey. So let's jump right in. We figured the best place to start is where most progress really begins, dealing with setbacks.
Yeah, that feels right.
So this brings us to segment 1, the foundation of resilience, all about navigating failure and adversity.
It's such a necessary starting point because our society is it's obsessed with these clean success narratives. They always skip the messy parts.
Right, they show the highlight reel, not the behind-the-scenes struggle.
Exactly. And what we're trying to do here is challenge that deeply ingrained idea that failure is some kind of terminal, shameful event.
Okay, so the first piece of advice we pulled out is a total cognitive game changer. It completely shifts the axis of how you view performance. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of success.
And the context for where this came from is so vital. This wasn't like delivered on a TED Talk stage.
Okay.
It came from a very unassuming university professor during his office hours.
Yeah.
The speaker had just gotten a brutal critique on a project.
The project they were convinced was their magnum opus, right?
Their absolute magnum opus. And it just got torn apart. Their idealism was shattered. They genuinely felt like their life was over.
Yeah. Oh, I think we've all been there. That feeling of devastation when your big expectation just slams into a wall of reality.
Totally. But what the professor did was so interesting. He didn't try to soften the blow. He didn't say, oh, it's okay, you'll do better next time.
He reframed the entire meaning of the blow itself.
Exactly. He basically said, this is supposed to happen. He was explaining the science of iteration.
Wow.
This advice positions failure not as a roadblock you hit, but as an integral component of the journey. It's the essential data point you needed to move forward.
That's such a powerful way to look at it. If you think about engineering or science, you don't just build a bridge and hope for the best.
Right.
You test the components. You break them on purpose. Failure is just the successful acquisition of knowledge about what doesn't work.
That's it.
Yeah.
And the deeper psychological shift here is that it decouples your self-worth from the outcome. When the speaker heard this, it relieved this enormous pressure to be perfect on the first try. It establishes this necessary loop. You attempt something, you fail, you learn from it, you adjust, and then you attempt it again.
So the failure isn't the end of the story, it's just the signal to start the next chapter.
It's the beginning of the next turn of the cycle.
The source material really highlights how immediate that cognitive shift was. The speaker went back to that same flawed project, not with despair,
but with a new sense of purpose.
Yeah. The internal question completely changed from why did I fail to, okay, what is the lesson here?
And that shift from paralysis to proactive inquiry, that's what cultivates what you could call intellectual humility.
It's more than just admitting you were wrong.
Oh, way more. It's actively changing how you approach learning itself. It's the recognition that your first attempt is almost never going to be perfect, and that chasing instant perfection is actually the enemy of real progress.
It turns the fear of failure into an appreciation for how instructive it is. It makes you, what's the word? Anti-fragile.
That's a great concept to bring in here.
Yeah.
You don't just withstand the shocks, you actually get stronger because of them.
So for anyone listening right now, if you're facing what feels like a failure, try to adopt that mindset. What data did I just successfully acquire from the setback that I didn't have before?
That's a great takeaway. Which brings us to the second piece of resilience advice. This one isn't about those acute single setbacks. It's about the sheer length and often invisible nature of the journey.
And the advice is, keep going, even when you can't see the finish line.
And this came from the speaker's grandfather.
Right. During a period of just profound exhaustion and self-doubt, the speaker was working on some grueling long-term goal and felt totally lost, like they were just spinning their wheels.
No tangible signs of progress at all.
And the grandfather's analogy is just beautiful because it makes this abstract idea of effort so concrete.
He talks about planting an orchard.
Yeah. The meticulous prep work, carefully planting all the saplings, and then what he called the long, seemingly stagnant years.
Right. Because for those first few years, the trees aren't really growing up where you can see them.
They're only growing roots beneath the surface. And you can't see the roots growing, but they are the entire foundation for everything that's going to come later.
It's the perfect antidote to our need for immediate gratification, isn't it? Especially in this culture we live in now, which is so hyper-accelerated.
Totally. The deeper meaning here is about overriding that impulse. It's about trusting the compounding effect of all these small, consistent actions.
Daily watering, the necessary pruning, even when the fruit, the reward, isn't visible yet.
That distinction between visible and invisible labor is so key. I mean, think about it. Any great achievement, mastering a skill, building a business, deepening a relationship, it requires these long periods of roots growing work.
Yeah, and if you don't have faith in that process and that compounding effect, you're going to quit. You'll look at a 2-year-old sapling and just think, this is worthless.
When in reality, it's just getting strong enough to support the harvest that's coming years down the line.
So resilience then isn't just about bouncing back from a big failure. It's about pushing through those long, arduous, uncelebrated periods of necessary growth.
Okay, so as we transition out of this first section, we're kind of asking you, the listener, to identify your current roots growing work. What's that uncelebrated grind that you're maintaining faith in? Because once you have that foundation of persistence, you have to move inward to understand what you're even persisting for.
Which brings us perfectly to segment 2, the compass of authenticity, knowing, and being your true self. And this all starts with self-knowledge.
And it begins with literally the oldest advice in the book, right? Attributed to the Oracle of Delphi, but repurposed here in a very practical way. Know thyself, for better or worse.
Yeah, and we see this play out in a really modern context. This advice came from a very discerning therapist.
The speaker was grappling with, was it career choices, relationship patterns?
All of it. And they were constantly trying to fix what they saw as their flaws. They felt adrift because they were trying to sail a ship, but they didn't even have the blueprint for it.
So the therapist basically said, look, a lot of your anxiety is coming from a lack of self-knowledge. You can't navigate the world if you don't understand your own internal operating system.
Your values, your weaknesses, your triggers, all of it.
And that phrase, for better or worse, that's the crucial part.
It's everything. Because this requires you to move beyond the surface level self-congratulatory stuff. You have to really excavate your inner landscape.
You have to acknowledge not just the polished deck, but also the creaking hull.
Exactly. It means accepting the less flattering things, the insecurities, the irrational fears, the tendency to procrastinate or avoid things. This is essential intelligence about yourself.
But why is acknowledging the worst part so revolutionary? I mean, isn't the goal to fix our flaws?
Well, yes and no. True strength doesn't come from pretending your flaws don't exist. It comes from acknowledging them and then learning to work with them, or maybe around them.
Okay, that makes sense.
The example in the source material is really powerful here. The speaker realized that their deep-seated aversion to conflict, which they saw as the worst part, wasn't just a weakness.
It was also the source of a strength.
Yes. It also fueled an exceptional ability to mediate, to build consensus, to see multiple valid perspectives. That was the better part.
Wow. So instead of wasting all this energy trying to become this aggressive debater, which just wasn't them,
Right.
they learned to leverage their natural desire for harmony to become this indispensable negotiator and team builder.
Exactly. By truly knowing that part of themselves, they could approach conflict strategically. They weren't debilitated by their aversion anymore. They were empowered by the flip side of it. And the outcome is this profound inner peace, because that war between who they thought they should be and who they were finally started to resolve.
That's a huge lesson right there for anyone listening. Take a look at the thing you struggle with the most and try to flip the script on it. How could that weakness actually be a latent strength you just haven't figured out how to use yet?
Which leads us directly to the second piece of advice on authenticity, a beautiful line from Oscar Wilde, repurposed by a mentor.
Be authentically you. Everyone else is already taken.
And this came during a period of real professional uncertainty. The speaker was actively trying to mimic their successful peers.
Adopting their jargon, their style, basically wearing a costume that felt incredibly heavy.
And the mentor saw this struggle and just highlighted a fundamental truth. The energy it takes to perform someone else's identity is completely draining.
Ironically, it diminishes your own natural strengths.
Totally. And it makes you seem inconsistent, untrustworthy, because people can sense the performance. They know something's off.
So this advice is really a form of liberation. In any professional setting, your real differentiation, your sustained impact, it doesn't come from conforming. It comes from leaning into what makes you distinct.
Your unique blend of talents, quirks, and perspectives. If you're always trying to sound like the most successful person in the room, you lose the ability to speak with your own voice.
The best version of you is not a copy of someone else.
It's the most refined, confident, and genuine version of yourself.
And we see the impact of this shift so clearly in the story. The speakers stopped trying to force themselves into being this aggressive debater.
And instead, they started to refine their inherent strengths.
Thoughtful analysis, empathetic listening, and this amazing ability to synthesize complex ideas into simple, accessible narratives.
And that cultivated a genuine leadership style, one based on transparency and consistency. When you stop performing, all that exhaustion just dissipates, and you're replaced by this natural flow of expressing who you really are. And that builds deep, lasting trust.
Okay, so we built a foundation of resilience. We've looked at the core value of authenticity. Now we need to move outward.
To how this wisdom shows up in our relationships.
Exactly, which brings us to segment 3, the art of connection, empathy, and understanding.
And we're starting with what feels like the simplest, most cliche rule, but is maybe the hardest one to master consistently. Listen more than you speak.
This advice was delivered by the speaker's grandmother, who was apparently a woman of few but very wise words.
She said it to a garrulous teenager.
And she used that classic analogy that I think many of us have heard. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, dear.
But the point here is that this isn't just about good manners, which is probably what the teenager thought. This is an active, strategic discipline.
It's active listening.
It's consciously suspending your judgment, quieting that internal monologue that's always busy preparing your next comeback, and genuinely trying to understand the other person's world. It's an act of profound respect.
It's that moment you realize a conversation isn't a competitive sport where you're just exchanging monologues.
It's a collaborative exploration.
The impact in professional settings was huge. By actually practicing this, resisting the urge to interrupt or offer an immediate solution, the speaker found that all this critical, unsaid information started to surface.
They realized that so often the quietest voices in a meeting held the most profound insights. They just needed the space to be heard.
Okay, but let me push back on that a little, because sometimes radical listening can feel passive. I mean, when do you pivot from just listening to actually interjecting responsibly?
That is the essential nuance, isn't it? You listen to understand, not just to wait for your turn to talk. You interject when you fully process what they've said, and you realize your piece of information is actually necessary to move the conversation forward constructively.
So it's about the quality of the interjection, not the quantity.
Exactly. The 2 ears, 1 mouth advice just ensures that most of your time, you're in that learning and processing state. Your interjection, then, has so much more power because it's built on a foundation of respect and understanding.
That makes perfect sense. And of course, in personal relationships, the impact is even more profound. It deepens intimacy, it builds trust just by bearing witness and validating someone's feelings without jumping in with unwanted advice.
And the next piece of advice takes that idea of profound listening and just infuses it with this sense of universal compassion.
Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, always.
This was shared by a high school English teacher. The class was discussing a fictional character, and we're being very quick to judge the character's irrational behavior.
It's such an ancient but perpetually necessary call to radical empathy, to non-judgment.
It forces you to acknowledge that your perception of other people is inherently limited. What we see, the grumpy colleague, the impatient driver, the struggling student, it's just the tip of the iceberg.
We are completely unaware of the vast submerged struggles underneath. The financial worries, the private health battles, the family distress, all the things that are shaping their behavior in that moment.
So we lack complete data. And because we lack complete data, the only appropriate default setting for any interaction has to be compassion and patience.
Rather than immediate critique or accusation, it's an injunction to extend grace, to assume there are complex circumstances you can't see.
The teacher in the story noted that your kindness might genuinely be the only light that person sees all day. And that shifts your responsibility entirely, doesn't it?
It does. You're not just managing a transaction anymore. You're managing an interaction with a complex and possibly struggling human being.
And the real-world impact of this was shown during a project crisis. A key colleague suddenly became withdrawn, started missing deadlines, wasn't communicating well.
The easy, purely transactional approach would have been to confront them about their performance. What's going on? You're dropping the ball.
Right. But instead, the speaker, applying this radical empathy, just chose to ask, hey, is everything okay? I just want to check in. I'm happy to help if you need some space.
And that simple, empathetic inquiry, rather than an accusation, uncovered a really difficult personal crisis that the colleague hadn't wanted to burden the team with.
And that just demonstrates the quiet power of empathy and leadership. The team was able to provide support, which not only saved the project, but deepened the trust on that team immeasurably.
It's the capacity to see past the immediate behavior to the underlying human condition.
Absolutely. It's foundational for creating strong, resilient teams.
Okay, moving on to segment 4, the engine of progress. We're now shifting from understanding ourselves and others to actively applying that wisdom for continuous growth and productivity. And we have 4 really dense, powerful pieces of advice here.
Let's start with a crucial cognitive shift away from negativity.
Yeah.
Stay curious, not judgmental. This is sometimes attributed to Walt Whitman, but we see it come to life here through a manager named Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah was correcting a junior analyst who was the speaker in this story, who was very prone to quickly labeling clients.
Difficult, unprepared, obstructionist.
The speaker was using judgment as a mental shortcut to avoid the hard work of actually understanding what was going on.
And that's the key mechanism we need to unpack here. Judgment, by its very nature, it closes off inquiry. It stamps a label on something difficult, and then you stop exploring.
You move on. You solve for the superficial problem, or you just avoid the person entirely.
But curiosity, on the other hand, it opens up possibilities. It invites a deeper investigation. It comes from a genuine desire to understand the why.
So it's an injunction against taking those easy cognitive shortcuts. When you hit resistance, the immediate reaction shouldn't be, this is flawed. It should be, I don't understand this yet.
And that fosters the intellectual humility you need for real problem solving. Let's look at the fantastic example here. The speaker got this expensive, seemingly impractical request from a client.
And their initial judgment was, this client has no idea about budget or scope.
But instead of just reacting with that judgment, they remembered Sarah's advice and they started asking these open-ended questions.
Help me understand the core frustration you're trying to solve here, and what would perfect look like if cost were no object?
And through that curious inquiry, they discovered that this supposedly impractical idea was actually an attempt to solve a super deep-rooted systemic issue.
That was costing the client 10 times the proposal price every single year.
Exactly. By approaching it with curiosity, they uncovered the real problem. And then they could collaboratively guide the client to a much better, more strategic solution.
So curiosity becomes a diagnostic tool. It lets you move past the symptoms to the actual disease.
Next up is the advice that deals with the sheer inevitability of chaos and external disruption. The only constant is change. Embrace it.
It echoes Heraclitus, but it was really impressed upon the speaker by a forward-thinking executive during a period of rapid industry transformation.
Right. A lot of their colleagues were clinging desperately to the old ways of doing things, and it was creating massive internal stress.
And this executive recognized that resistance wasn't just futile, it was exhausting and actively damaging.
The deeper meaning is that change isn't some occasional event we have to endure. It is the natural default state of existence. And to embrace it means you have to actively seek to understand it, adapt to it, and even leverage it for your own advantage.
So true security doesn't come from resisting the flux.
It comes from becoming profoundly good at navigating it.
So practically speaking, how does a person stop resisting and start embracing? What does that actually look like?
It's a shift in how you identify yourself. You stop identifying as the person who is an expert at X, and you start identifying as the person who solves problems and learns new skills.
Ah, I see.
The speaker saw this firsthand during a major organizational restructuring. They were introducing this new, intimidating software platform.
And instead of complaining or stalling like everyone else, the speaker leaned into the uncertainty.
They volunteered to be an early adopter. They learned the software inside and out, and they became the go-to resource for their entire team. They became an expert on the new state of play.
And that proactive, embracing stance positioned them as a leader in adaptation.
It opened up new doors, new responsibilities, and it accelerated their career. It taught them to view new technologies not as threats, but as tools for progress.
The next piece in the segment is all about taking ownership and defying that classic bureaucratic inertia.
Don't wait for permission. Create your own.
This came from an entrepreneurial friend who was watching the speaker get so frustrated with corporate hurdles, always waiting for that green light from management to start even a simple improvement project.
And the friend called this permission paralysis.
Which is a great term for it. The core of this advice is basically entrepreneurship, the idea that you don't have to quit your job to be an innovator.
It's a powerful call to ownership and initiative. It encourages a bias towards action, towards taking calculated risks to drive progress without needing explicit top-down authorization for every single step.
The friend told them, if you see a problem or an opportunity, don't write a 50-page proposal asking for permission.
Just start building the solution on the side. Show, don't just tell.
That is so profound because it respects the time of the people in charge. Managers are busy. Approving a vague concept is hard. Approving a working prototype is easy.
And the example here involved this outdated, clunky reporting system that everyone on the team hated.
Instead of waiting for a full-scale IT initiative that might take a year,
the speaker taught themselves some basic automation tools, built a functional prototype over a few weeks, and then presented it to their management.
And the immediate measurable value was just undeniable. Management didn't need to be convinced. They could see the time savings right there in action.
And that led to immediate support, increased autonomy, and a huge expansion of the project. It empowers you to feel a greater sense of agency in your work.
It's a reminder that impact often comes not from waiting for a seat at the table, but from building something so valuable that people want you at their table.
Exactly. The power of stealth creation.
Okay, we've talked about acting now, but so often we hesitate because we feel like we've already wasted too much time, which takes us to the fourth and final piece of advice in this segment. It's the antidote to regret and paralysis.
The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
This ancient Chinese proverb was shared by a wise mentor when the speaker was lamenting all these deferred goals, feeling like they were too old or it was too late to start learning a new language or get a new certification.
And this maxim is like a psychological hammer blow against that kind of regret-driven paralysis. Regret immobilizes you because you're focused on the past.
This proverb forces your focus forward. It champions present action as the only viable response to missed opportunities.
The deeper meaning is that every single moment is a fresh beginning. And if you continue to do nothing today, that will only become your future regret.
The cumulative effect of even small, consistent effort now, that 15 minutes of language practice, that one page of a book, it will yield infinitely more than continued inaction.
It also reframes that feeling of being too late. You might not become a master in 20 years, but you'll be infinitely better off than you are today, and your future self will thank your current self for just getting started.
The speaker applied this to learning a new language. They just committed to 15 or 20 minutes a day, consistency over intensity.
And while the progress felt agonizingly slow at first, those small, consistent plantings compounded over time until he achieved conversational fluency.
It just proves that the cumulative effect is so much greater than we can imagine in the moment. It fosters a much healthier relationship with time and regret.
Which transitions us really smoothly into our final segment. Segment 5, the wisdom of simplicity and perspective. These pieces of advice are all about cutting through the noise, allocating your energy effectively, and finding that long-term equilibrium.
And we start with a really essential lesson for efficiency and impact. Less is more.
This minimalist mantra came from an incredibly effective project manager who just excelled at cutting through complexity. The speaker, who was prone to over-engineering solutions and over-explaining things, got this advice after submitting a bloated 60-slide proposal.
And the manager explained that true elegance, true effectiveness lies in intentional reduction. You have to strip away everything superfluous to reveal the essential core.
We waste so much energy on elements that contribute only marginally to the final result. This principle is universal. It applies to design, communication, processes.
Even how you manage your own schedule.
Exactly. It encourages intentionality. You have to ensure every single element serves the specific purpose, and if it doesn't, you remove it. With prejudice.
If you can communicate your idea in 3 points, why on earth would you use 10?
The illustrative example was this required overhaul of a big stakeholder presentation. The initial draft was just dense, filled with every piece of data imaginable.
But by remembering less is more, the speaker distilled that whole message down to 3 core points, supported by only the most compelling, simply visualized data.
And the result was a presentation that was less than half the length, but far more impactful. The stakeholders got the core message immediately, which expedited their decision-making by days.
So the clarity of the less made the more impact, more speed, more trust possible.
Okay, the next piece of advice talks about where we consciously direct our mental energy.
What you focus on expands.
This profound psychological truth came from a life coach. The speaker was feeling utterly overwhelmed and scattered, trying to tackle every single problem at once. And the coach just stated simply that our attention is a powerful magnifying glass.
This is related to the reticular activating system, the RAS, in our brains.
That's it. It's the filter that dictates what information gets through to our awareness. If you decide to buy a new car, suddenly you see that make and model everywhere on the road.
You've trained your RAS to focus on it.
And it's the same psychologically. If you dwell on problems, you amplify them, you start seeing more problems. If you focus on solutions and opportunities and resources, you amplify your own resourcefulness and growth. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of attention.
It's about consciously choosing where to place your mental energy.
The practical application of this involved consciously shifting team discussions away from just identifying problems and toward generating solutions. When a conversation would spiral into negativity, the speaker would gently pivot.
They'd ask, okay, we've identified the challenges. Now, what are 3 potential solutions we could explore, starting with what we already have?
And personally, this was applied during a really difficult professional transition that was triggering a lot of anxiety. Instead of dwelling on the fear and uncertainty, the speaker started a daily gratitude journal.
Intentionally focusing on new skills learned, supportive connections, small wins.
And that intentional redirection of focus amplified their optimism and resourcefulness. It trained their brain to look for the good, not to dismiss the hard parts, but to make sure their energy wasn't completely drained by them.
Our third perspective piece offers some profound grounding, especially in the face of suffering.
This too shall pass.
This ancient adage, often linked to King Solomon or Sufi poets, was shared by the speaker's mother during an intense period of anguish, a painful breakup where the sadness felt permanent, inescapable.
It's a profound declaration of impermanence, a universal truth about the transient nature of all experiences, both suffering and joy. It's a necessary counterbalance to the brain's tendency to absolutize whatever emotional state we're in right now.
When you're deep in pain or even just overwhelmed by a project deadline, it feels eternal, like the world will never look any different. This advice plants a little seed of hope, a reminder that there will inevitably be beyond this.
And the power here is twofold. First, during hardship, it gives you a sense of equanimity, calm persistence. It reminds you that this demanding phase is temporary. You just have to make it through today.
Because the pain will pass.
And secondly, maybe more subtly, it brings a deeper appreciation for the good moments. If suffering is transient, well, so is happiness. It reminds us to fully savor those positive experiences, to be truly present with them, because they too are fleeting.
It fosters this healthy, almost stoic detachment from outcomes and a deeper connection to the present moment.
And finally, advice number 14. This is so foundational for cultivating a lasting sense of contentment. Count your blessings, not your troubles.
This came from an elementary school teacher, a Mrs. Davison. It was aimed at the speaker's childhood negativity bias, that tendency we all have to focus on what's wrong, what we lack.
And Mrs. Davison explained that the world is almost designed to show you what's missing. But if you want to be happy, you have to intentionally learn to see what is already there.
This is a direct counter-strategy to that negativity bias, which is our brain's evolutionary tendency to prioritize threats and negative experiences.
Practicing gratitude is essentially shifting your perception from a state of scarcity to a state of abundance. It builds resilience and overall life satisfaction by actively looking for and acknowledging the positive.
And it's not about ignoring problems, it's about balancing the scale. By acknowledging your blessings, you build up this reservoir of mental and emotional strength that keeps you from being completely depleted by the inevitable setbacks.
The practical impact was seen during a period of intense professional pressure and burnout. The speaker made it a non-negotiable routine to dedicate just 5 minutes every morning to listing things they were grateful for.
Strong coffee, supportive colleagues, the challenge of the work, a quiet moment.
And that seemingly simple ritual fundamentally shifted their emotional state. It reduced their anxiety, increased their energy, and helped them approach complex problems with a much more positive and resourceful mindset.
It teaches you that gratitude isn't just a fleeting emotion. It's a conscious practice that can profoundly reshape how you see the world.
By consistently counting your blessings, you are actively choosing optimism as a strategy for a fulfilled life.
So we have journeyed through these 14 powerful kernels of advice today. We've moved from internal resilience, treating failure as data, trusting unseen growth through authenticity and knowing yourself for better or worse,
into relational wisdom, which requires that profound listening and radical empathy.
and then finally into proactive progress, where we choose curiosity over judgment, embrace change, create our own permission, and commit to action right now. We concluded with perspective, learning to simplify, directing our focus toward growth, and accepting the truths of impermanence and the power of gratitude.
The true beauty of putting all this together is realizing that these aren't just isolated maxims you'd find on a refrigerator magnet.
No, they're interconnected.
They're interconnected threads that form this really robust framework for living a meaningful, resilient, and authentic life. Their genius is in their timeless simplicity and their universal applicability.
But the transformation, of course, it comes from application, not just from hearing about it.
Not just acknowledgement. We've given you the map, but now you have to walk the terrain. The goal is to consciously reaffirm the values and insights that empower you, so that these lessons become automatic reflexes rather than conscious deliberations.
So as you reflect on these powerful insights, the ones you heard today and the ones you've encountered on your own journey, we'll leave you with this provocative thought to carry forward. What specific piece of wisdom, one that was given to you or that you discovered, has truly shaped your trajectory? And how can you leverage that foundational truth to drive your progress starting right now?
That's the work of a lifetime, and the only perfect time to start is today.
Thanks for diving deep with us.